Superintendent, I hope you're ready for mouth-watering hamburgers.
I thought we were having steamed clams.
No, I said steamed hams. That's what I call hamburgers.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I'm Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Helmet Sunday Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we're talking about the Hartford Yard Goats, who are an absolute icon of minor league baseball logos and nicknames, just one of the most popular ones out there. Very happy to be joined by Tim Restall, who was the general manager with the New Britain Rock Cats, the predecessor to the Hartford Yard Goats, and is now the team president with the Yard Goats. Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
Paul, thanks for having me on, and thank you for the nice, kind words. I gotta make sure that I record that so I bring that around with me to wherever I go.
Well, I'll tell you what, just download this episode and keep that as your ringtone right there. That's
Absolutely.
The Yard Goats. First of all, I have to tell you, Tim, that I have occasionally in the course of my time on Twitter, I have conducted these little brackets where, you do the what's the best logo in the minor leagues thing. And I'm always very particular that I want to make sure when I do these brackets that I represent that every team has the opportunity to compete. So I did one a couple of years ago with all then 160 minor league baseball teams, affiliated minor league baseball teams. And the Yard Goats came out on top as being the favorite of my followers on Twitter, having the best logo in minor league baseball, affiliated minor league baseball. But anyway, the Yard Goats, first of all, so many things to love about this logo and nickname. I mean, obviously, it's a really fun brand. It's really fun visually. The whole sort of identity of the team is really fun and playful. But my favorite thing about it is that it really exemplifies, my whole ethos about minor league baseball, which is these names and the logos and the brands tell the story of the communities where they play. So I'm just going to ask you, if you would, for the listener, where does the nickname Yard Goat come from?
It's a great question. And when we did the Name the Team contest, when the name came in, I had to Google it because I had never heard Yard Goats before. But Yard Goat is a small train that works in the train yard. So if you ever see like those large 18-wheelers and then they have the small 18-wheelers in the yard moving cars around, that's a Yard Goat. But it originally started with a train, and the train gets the cars all lined up. So when the bigger trains come in, and I'm not a train enthusiastic, so I don't know all the terminology, but that is what a Yard Goat is. And, so it's in the world of trains, and that's where the name got submitted because Hartford had a rich history of trains in the area. And that's where the Yard Goats name came from.
So I do particularly love this about this brand because first of all, the Yard Goat, the sort of locomotive switcher that you described there, right? Like it's not the big, like glorious, like out on the open railroad, flying across the country, the big, glorious locomotive engine. It's this squat little workhorse in the rail yard, never gets to leave the rail yard and pushes all the, the big glorious ones around. So it's like this total workhorse of the railroad lot there. And that doesn't get any of the glory.
Yeah. And if you think about it, our players are probably, they're all trying to become major league players. So it really ties to even what goes on in the field, that these are the workhorses trying to make it to the, to the bigs. So it's just getting everything in line and getting all the things behind the house set so that when they're ready, they can go. So it's funny how it, as we, we're going through the whole Name the Team contest, how these things started to develop. And then obviously with our logo, we did not embrace the train world. We embraced the goat world. And that was a big thing.
Well, I'll be talking with Jason Klein of Brandiose about this logo after you and I chat here. This is sort of a signature Brandiose move of taking this term, taking this idea that's appropriate to a team and sort of turning it on its head a little bit, right? Like, I mean, sort of similar to the iron pigs, who are named after the pig iron that they forge in the steel mills of Eastern Pennsylvania. The Yard Goats, it's a railroad term. They turned it into a literal goat. And you said yourself that you had to look the term up. You were with the team when they, moved from New Britain. They were the Rock Cats and then became the Yard Goats. I know that I remember from the story that I wrote in 2016 about the team that only one person in the Name the Team contest submitted the idea for Yard Goats for a team name. So when you made that switch and that name came out, and surely a lot of people had to go and look it up, right? What was the reaction of the local community?
So when we did the name the team contest, we always knew that we were going to release the name, and then I think it was 60 days later do the logo. And so we released the name Yard Goats, and part of it was we did 10, we had our top 10 names, and then we went down to the 5 names. And so we were all, the Hartford Whirlybirds, the hedgehogs, the praying mantis is the state of Connecticut insect. Like, we're all these different names. And when we became the Yard Goats, there was a lot of, I want to say, definitely hatred. Like, they did not like the name. They didn't, they thought it was disrespectful to goats, disrespectful to the communities that, have goats. Like, it was not, people said that we were making fun of the state, making fun of the city. It did not go over well, and, at that point when we announced it, we were probably the most hated people in the state of Connecticut. Like, no one liked the name Yard Goats, or there are very few people like the name Yard Goats. And so as all that negativity died down, and then we released the logo, people loved it. We sold, we broke merchandise sales in the first 24 hours. I think in the first 2 weeks we had sold to every state. We couldn't, keep merchandise in. And, part of it that I never, we knew we want to pay homage to the Hartford Whalers, the NHL team that was ripped out of this community years ago. But what I never realized is that the Whalers fans, when people would, on social media voice their dislike for the logo, the Whalers fans were like, well, those are the Whalers colors, so this is our team. Mm-hmm. And if you're making fun of this team, then you're making fun of our team. So there was huge support for the logo once it was released, and really, became a very, fan favorite logo.
Well, and I am wearing my Yard Goats cap right now, and
it's got that. Thank you so much for representing
that Whalers green. Actually, I have to say, I was once I have a sizable collection of helmet Sundays, and minor league baseball, the website for minor league baseball, featured my collection, and Josh Jackson wrote a story about it. And in the cover photo, I'm standing in front of the collection, and I'm actually wearing my Yard Goats cap and my green Yard Goats t-shirt, which I bought because I promised, first of all, because I love the logo, but also because I promised that whoever won that contest that I was having on my Twitter account, I was going to buy gear from that team. So I have not been to Dunkin' Donuts Park. It's high on my list. It keeps winning awards. It keeps winning contests for best ballpark in minor league baseball. And it's a very celebrated ballpark. Absolutely want to get there. One of my favorite things that I understand about what you do there is that as an homage to the Whalers, that you do play Brass Bonanza on occasion there at the ballpark.
Yeah, actually, anytime we get a home run, that is, it gets, so we're Dunkin' Donuts Park. Mm-hmm. So we actually have a 15-foot high Dunkin' Donuts cup on top of the video board, and that steams when we hit a home run, and we play Brass Bonanza, and fans go wild. We also do a Whalers alumni weekend that we every year, where we bring Whalers back into the community, and it's all tied to a hospital visit for children. We do a meet and greet, people get autographs, and we really celebrate what the Whalers brought to this area. So it's there's always a lot of Brass Bonanza being played in this area.
The hockey night, I think, is really brilliant too, because you guys have the traditional Yard Goats logo is the goat itself, and he's got a bat in its mouth, and it's a slightly broken bat because it's being chewed on by a goat, obviously. But on hockey night, there's a version of the logo with a hockey stick instead of a baseball bat, and so that
the hockey goat, we call it. And that was the first time we really decided to utilize your logo, because your logo is your brand, and that's your flagship, and the bat was there. But as we started coming up with different themes and different promotions, whether it's Star Wars night, whether it's Christmas in July, we realized that goat could bite something else besides a bat. So the hockey stick was the first ever, other than the bat, logo in the goat's mouth. And that item does, those hats and t-shirts do really well, especially on the Whalers alumni weekend. But we really, we embrace the goat, and we're able to roll that into different things and utilize it for different promotions, from, having, when we were doing vaccinations at the ballpark, that the goat had a, vaccination needle, to, there's a medical doctor's awareness night, and we're having, there's a scalpel in the goat's mouth. Really, we really embrace it and utilize it for different promotions and themed events.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. Before we get too far away from the railroad theme here, because that to me was sort of an early aha moment in, as I was writing about minor league baseball logos, like Yard Goats, a railroad term. Hartford, Connecticut had the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. And it's basically one of the reasons that Hartford exists, right, is because it was centrally located on this railroad line.
Yep.
One of the details that I absolutely love about the brand itself, you have the goat portion of the logo, but the type is derived directly from this old ornate signage from the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad signage. And so I'm going to talk to Jason Klein about the sort of particulars of that brand, but that connection to the railroad that you have in the typography in your logo, is that something that people recognize? Is that a part of the community in Hartford, or does that need explaining?
It does. And I think, and I remember the conversation, and we were going through the logo design with Brandiose. We actually had a consultant, Chuck Domino, and he had found that iconic image of the Hartford New Haven Railroad. And he said, let's take our font and make it look like that. And Brandiose just took that idea and really, created an image that we're able to use in our script and our font. We use it everywhere. And, not everyone knows the history of the Hartford New Haven railroad line, but those that do definitely recognize it. And we have the actually logo on some walls throughout the ballpark. So, and we always use that.
Well, another reason that I need to get to the ballpark, the Yard Goats, like I said, they're high on my list. I do a road trip every year called Baseball Palooza with some college buddies. This was 20 years ago. We went to college together, right? But we still, every year, we do 4 minor league games in 4 days in 4 different stadiums. But I can't convince the guys to go to Hartford because half of them live in Boston, and they, they're right there.
They don't want to travel an hour away. They want to travel several hours away.
Yeah, they want to get out to California or middle of the country, or so it's there wouldn't be a trip for them if we started in Hartford. So I might have to do that one on my own, I guess. You guys also have some really fun theme nights that you do. You mentioned the Whirly Birds as one of the possibilities in the Name the Team contest. I know that you did a What Might Have Been night, and you actually played as the Whirly Birds. How was that received? Was there the sense of, ooh, we dodged a bullet there, or were people sort of wistful for that?
No, absolutely. We've done 2 or 3 of them. I know we've done the Hartford Praying Mantis, we did the Whirly Birds, and we did the River Hogs. Those were the 3 that we did. And people enjoy it. They like the merchandise, and especially, in the early years, there was a lot of people like, I voted for the Praying Mantis, so I want to go get a shirt and such. So they really embraced it. We've stepped away from it because it's a couple years ago now, but it's something that we definitely have on our docket to bring back, because it's just a different look. It's a different image. It's a different theme, and we get to do it for one night. So it's always a fun night, and our creative services department does a great job in incorporating that to all the games. And like when we do, normally we have, our kids do a race, and we call it the baby goat race. On the Whirly Birds night, it was the baby bird race. So like we really embrace it throughout the whole game. So it's worked out pretty well.
I remember the original list of team names that came out in 2015 when you were going through the Name the Team contest. And one of them I remember being the Honey Badgers, which was like a hilarious social media reference that flamed out about 6 months later. So thank God it wasn't the honey badgers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny, looking at those names and hedgehogs and hound dogs and screeching owls and everything. It was, there was a lot of names that I'm glad we didn't go with.
Well, and the one that you did go with has been so successful and such a huge part of minor league baseball. I want to ask too about another one of your alternate identities, which is the steamed burgers or the steamed cheeseburgers. I've seen it both ways. Is that an either or situation? Which one of those two is it?
It's really if you like cheese or not. So yeah, so on the branding of the shirts, we did the steamed burgers, but we often talk about it as the steamed cheeseburgers. But as long as it's a steamed burger of some type, that's really what it comes down to. But yeah, that's our iconic food item that we play as. And when we came down, and I believe, we followed similar suit to the other minor league baseball teams that were playing as food. We said, well, what's Connecticut known for? And the three things that came up was pizza. They have New Haven pizza, and is great pizza. The second one is lobster rolls. They have lobster rolls down on the shoreline. And the third item was, a steamed burger, steamed cheeseburger. And I'm like, what's a steamed cheeseburger? And so there's a diner down in, it was Middletown. We drove down, we have a steamed cheeseburger. And originally steamed cheeseburger was created in Connecticut. And basically it's a burger that's steamed, right? It's not, they have special cooking in the way they do it. And, we started, said, all right, well, let's work on that now. So we worked on creating a logo. And, I remember the last edit, I said, the burger's just, it's a neat burger, but he's just too happy. And then I said, he's got to be mad. And the person that was doing it came back and said, you're going to like this. And the burger's steaming mad. And so that we play as the steamed cheeseburger. We have a Ted Steam Burgers comes in and sells steamed cheeseburgers that night. And it's just a way, our hat has, a burger 360 degrees around it. So you envision the burger on top of your head, and we embrace it. And we do that 2-3 times a year. So it's a lot of fun.
Who created the steamed cheeseburgers logo?
So her name is Caroline Jetty, and she worked as a creative services department. And now she's moved on. Yeah. We knew, like, when she was working here, like, it's only a matter of time. Caroline was out of this world.
I have to say, I'm a huge fan of the feeding frenzy in minor league baseball, right? The food-based alternate logos. And, every time I see one that I have a connection to, right? Like the Delmarva Scrapple, right? Or the Lehigh Valley cheesesteaks, it's such a great way to make a connection to the local community. So I remember researching to write it up for sportslogos.net that the steamed cheeseburger was invented in Hartford or in Connecticut. And I remember when that came out, that immediately the entire internet leapt to a bunch of Simpsons references, because there's that scene where Principal Skinner is serving steamed hams, he calls them, to Superintendent Chalmers. And so were you guys aware of that sketch when you did the logo?
Not at all. And, we unveiled that logo. And if I remember right, because we had put it on social media, it had more interactions and more views and such than when we announced we were the Yard Goats. And that was amazing to me to see that. But it's worked out well. Last year I was on a Zoom press conference, and I was fortunate to be on a Zoom with the governor, and behind me was a jersey that we have framed of the steamed cheeseburgers, and he mentioned it like that's great. And literally we had sold like 50 hats the next day. Like, it's funny how people, because the hat is unique, the jersey has sesame seeds on it, and it's a ketchup and mustard font. and everything else like that. So it's worked out really well. But yeah, this did not know about steamed hams, did not know it was in The Simpsons, but obviously that helped fuel the interactions.
Well, that's that's fun because I mean it's just such a successful version of that. And what I would really love, honestly, and this is my personal pitch to you here, and I don't know if we've seen anything like this happen with these food-based logos. Would love to see the Steamed Burgers logo on a helmet Sunday at Dunkin' Donuts Park. That would be
ooh, that's a pretty good idea. That is a pretty good idea.
I'll tell you what, I won't even demand a percentage. I'll just ask for one of the helmets. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about was, obviously now in retrospect, I mean, you look at this brand that's been around since 2016. That's when the move happened. So right now it feels like such an established part of minor league baseball, right? Like it's hard to imagine certainly AA minor league baseball without the Hartford Yard Goats, but all of, affiliated minor league baseball in general, you can't even imagine minor league baseball existing without the Yard Goats. But when the team, came on the scene in 2016, not only, like you say, there was this, uncertain reaction at best from the local community, but then there were also, there were conditions with the ballpark where you had to play at least most of the year, if not in the entire 2016 season, on the road. And that sort of forced you into building a brand in an atypical way, which I think is a big part of how your social media presence became such a hit. The team's social media, the Twitter account in particular, because I know that because that's where I spend most of my time on social media. It was such a hit, it continues to be such a hit on social media. Is there a relationship between those two things, or am I drawing a connection that doesn't exist?
No, it absolutely does. And so in 2016, there was construction delays on getting the ballpark opening. And so we were playing a majority of our games on the road. We were using Norwich as a temporary home, and played, I think it was 15 or 18 games down there. And so, but because we were in this market and the ballpark was getting done and we had season ticket holders picking out seats and all that stuff, we still needed to entertain our fans. And most fans, ballpark fans, get entertained in a ballpark, but we did not have one. So we really relied on social media and keeping up on messaging, interacting with fans, doing contests, all that stuff. And it really had us focus on the social media, because that was, at the ballpark, the customer experience is so important. We call these touch points. So from the point they buy a ticket to the point they get off the highway, to the point that they park their car, to the point that they walk in, we always want those to be the best experiences that they can have. So they come back again and again and again. But when you don't have a ballpark, you don't have that experience. The social media is your voice. And it's your way of connecting with fans. So whether it's doing, giving player information update, or whether it's doing a contest or promotion and things like that. And that model that we used helped us build our brand. But also when 2020 came and there was no baseball and everyone was shutting down, we had the playbook from 2016. So we literally blew the dust off of it. It wasn't on. There wasn't much dust because it was 16, and literally started doing that and having contests and doing interaction with fans and doing videos and all that kind of stuff. Because like in 16, we had our entire staff ready to go. We just didn't have a ballpark. So we had all our social media, video services, creative services, so they can make videos, they can do all these things. So you're very correct. Like doing the 2016 season obviously allowed us to build our brands and focus on that, where it was a big part of it,
Well, like I said, it's, that this team is iconic. It's been such a huge influence in what minor league baseball is to this day. And so I appreciate getting to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to Jason next about this brand. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and I will look forward to that Steamed Burgers helmet Sunday when I get to visit. Tim, the Yard Goats are easy to find on social media and online, but do you have a presence online that people can follow?
I do on Twitter. It's Tim Rex, TimRexx. And that's where I tend to do most of my living as well.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for everything the Yard Goats are doing. And I can't wait to get to a ball game in Hartford.
Thanks for having me on, and go Yard Goats.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm thrilled, as always, to welcome back, I would say, friend of the podcast now. Like,
I mean, straight homie is the podcast for sure. Yes.
Officially a Baseball by Design regular, Jason Klein of Brandiose. I mean, obviously, Jason, you and I go way, way back. This is breaking news, by the way. There are conversations about trying to get out to San Diego for the winter meetings in 2022 here for the podcast. So,
yeah, that would be amazing.
We are absolutely going to be swinging by the old Brandiose studio to check out the homeland there for the studio. So anyway, that conversation is for down the line. Right now, today, we are talking about the Hartford Yard Goats, which is just a signature Brandiose design. Took the world by storm when it came out. The team itself had some sort of rocky beginnings, had that year where they played as a road team, basically. Right. But the brand itself was just, I mean, this is one that I think did not have, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Did this one have a big backlash when it first came out? Was there a big, this is too crazy?
A little. I mean, they always have backlash. So it's, it's always, and I don't even call it backlash. It's just people just sort of like, wait, what? What's going on here?
Yep.
And
the L curve.
Yeah, right. The J curve. The J curve.
J curve.
Yeah, the J curve.
I was close. I was close in the alphabet there.
Yeah. So there's always a J curve, no matter what the town is. Hartford has had a history of teams being ripped from it. Whether it was the Whalers. There was a point when the Patriots were promised that they were going to go, and then, sort of, I don't know if it was used against Massachusetts or whatever it was, but that was sort of, a lot of locals felt like that was ripped from them as well. And so I think there was a legitimately fair, cautiously optimistic sentiment, like, well, is this going to happen? Are we really going to get a team? Like, or is this, are we being played against another city for whatever reason? No, like the team was coming, and it was great. So one of the things early on, we obviously love doing authentic, immersive research, getting to know the community, the folklore. And during our research visit, the names are kind of flying around. But one of the things that was brought up in the focus group is that these words are etched in my mind. Like, Hartford was small, it's temperamental, it's bold, and oftentimes quarrelsome. And so there was just sort of like this, this sort of small, temperamental, bold, quarrelsome. Like, that was the spirit of the community that was constantly in our head as we're, vetting all these team names. So that was sort of the intro to where we approached the whole project.
Obviously, so much of this identity has to do with the railroad, which I love, because I think, people see yard goats, they see this animal with a baseball bat, and they, so often, my favorite thing about investigating minor league baseball names is the people who say, they just pulled two names out of a dictionary and slapped them on a baseball jersey, right? The term yard goat has a connection to the railroad industry. Tim Restall and I talked about that in the previous segment on this podcast.
I love Tim.
Yeah, it was a great conversation with Tim. But the connection to specifically the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, was obviously something that you guys discovered there.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about here. So let's talk about, first of all, you brought up the teams that have been ripped from Hartford.
Yeah.
And so that informed the color choices for this Yard Goats brand.
Well, actually, I'm gonna go in opposite order, because that was the very last thing that happened when we were, the names are sort of, you get thousands of team names and thousands of votes, and everybody's weighing in. And at some point, ultimately the ownership has to decide. The community voting is very important. It's part of the process. It's something that we absolutely weigh and consider. But ultimately, the team has to say, hey, we're gonna live with this. And there's a lot of factors. There's what can you do with it creatively? Can you build an experience around it? And the short list, there was I remember there was a hog reference, like the mud hogs or something like that. There was the whirlybirds, which was a reference to the helicopter history and building helicopters in the area. There was the mantis, the state insect of Connecticut. So there's a lot of names that were being, considered. And one of the things, we were thinking about when we were sat down was like, what can you do with these? Before you hit the drawing board, can you build an experience around it? And I used this example for the mantis a lot because the mantis was like, oh, that's cool. Like you could have like a stick bug playing stick bat, stick baseball. There's this whole thing that you could create. The logo would be great. There's no praying mantis. One of the things that we want to do too is we want to own the subject matter as best we can. Not always, but most of the time we're looking for, can we own the subject matter? You jump, shrimp mascots. There's not a lot of shrimp mascots out there. There's not a lot of Chihuahua mascots out there. We could own the praying mantis. There's no praying mantis mascots out there. We could own that. And that is very powerful in terms of the long-term brand value, being associated with it, people just remembering it. So if we can own the subject matter, that's really important. And we knew we could own it with the mantis. The problem was, how do you create a fan experience around like the praying mantis, right? How do you create this? How do you create a world? Like when you go to Disney, like what does it look like to go to like praying mantis land? Right? It's like, it was, what is the kids club called, the larva? Like,
it's pretty good actually, Jason.
I mean, that was like the one we got stuck there, and we were like, where do you go from there? I mean, I guess you could go insect, universe, but just felt like, there's a point where the brand gets developed and then it gets handed off, and the staff has to be inspired enough to take it and come up with promotions and theme nights and, the experience with the kids club, the mascot, where with the name of the team store. Is there a seniors club? What is that called? And so if the staff is not inspired, or they don't feel like it's fertile territory to be able to create their own inspirational ideas, it's like not a good idea to go down that path, because the last thing we want to do is have this vision, which requires pulling teeth to create, a world around it. So long story short, we decided, okay, the mantis wasn't going to work. The idea of the metaphor of a yard goat, which is a locomotive basically in the, in the rail yard that positions trains and cars to go up to major cities. That metaphor was like, wow, that's a great baseball connection, right? There was also this idea of like being small, being bold, being quarrelsome, being sort of temperamental. There's always like, very authentic Hartford traits, but also very authentic goat traits. And so it just kind of all lined up. There's the Naval Academy, but there wasn't a ton of like goat sort of mascots that we felt like was out there at the time, and we felt like we could really own that subject matter. So that's where the name came. It's funny you mentioned the colors. We looked at tons of colors, and we were really fortunate not only to work with Tim and the Solomons, who are the owners of the group, but Chuck Domino of Redding and Iron Pigs and Flying Squirrels and Jumbo Shrimp and what do you call it? Rubber Ducks fame was in on that project creatively with us. The godfather of minor league marketing. And so, it was great to have Chuck sort of saying that this feels like it rhymes with the Flying Squirrels and the Iron Pigs. And so we looked at hundreds of color combinations, and at some point we landed on the Whalers colors. I wish I could tell you it was intentional from the very beginning. But it was just like, oh, what would we do Whalers colors? And then, people like lost their minds. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing. Right. We were like, we didn't think about it. So that was how the colors came about. And then the typography.
This is my favorite, by the way. I can't wait to talk about the typography here, because this is like my favorite detail of this logo.
I mean, the typography was like, okay, well, if there's this rail connection, there's the New York and New Haven Railway, which I'm pretty sure was defunct. But it was like old, like early 1900s lettering, which felt baseballish, and would look like a sort of a baseball script. It had a little bit of a goat horn feel to it. And it was used by the railroad. So it was this kind of baseball meets goat meets, authentically railroad lettering of the city. And it came together beautifully. That was Chuck's idea. So he was like, oh, what if we did this lettering? And I'm like, who owns this? Is it around? Is it like, because you don't want to copy like the Amtrak logo and be like, all of a sudden you get like Uncle Sam calling you up and saying, wait a second. It was defunct and it worked out great.
Yeah, it shut down. The New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad shut down in 1968. So I think you were safe there. But I'll definitely tweet this out and I'll put it on Instagram when this episode goes up, because the lettering on those signs is just beautiful, right? And this is something that graphic designers do, and I think some other people do it too. But like taking photos of old signs is just like a favorite pastime of every graphic designer I know. And so this lettering is so distinct and really just beautiful. And so to incorporate that into the logo, one of my favorite details, and creates the connection to the railroad, right? Because I think there are a lot of people out there who don't know that this is, a railroad based identity. And there are so many railroad based identities out there, right? And so if you're talking about owning, goats as an identity for a team, you can't own railroads as an identity for a team because there's too many of them. There's 12, 15 teams out there named for railroads.
I would add to that too, like one of the things that is, obviously the rail history is important to America, and it's one of the great stories of America, and so much that it helped build cities and move goods and stuff like that. Railroads are not huggable, and it's really challenging to create a railroad identity that is huggable, that is new. It comes from a different approach. It's been done so often that it's like the Wildcats is to high school logos. Wildcats is to high school mascots as railroads is to American sports teams. And no offense to any American sports teams that are railroad themed, but it's ubiquitous. It's challenging. It's not huggable. Machinery in general is not huggable. It's cold. And so that's why you see a lot of animals. You see a lot of like nature and life. It's alive. It's living, it's breathing. But we knew for that reason, it's like, we could have gotten a railroad part of the story out of it and a goat story, not unlike the Iron Pigs, which has steel and pigs. But I think we just decided, you know what? Let's just go all in on the goat stuff. And maybe Hartford stuff, and let's, maybe pause on the railroad stuff.
It's, I think that the connection that, especially with the type and then the backstory, it's just one of those things that makes minor league baseball branding great, is being able to have this story, the connections to the railroad and being able to explain it. I just, when I launched this podcast, I did a little 3-minute trailer video. And the first team that I mentioned as, hey, you think this is goofy, but there's actually this amazing story behind it, is the Hartford Yard Goats. So this to me is like the quintessential one. I have to give credit now to TikTok superstar and minor league baseball reviewer Emma Sagerman, who has created these very funny videos where she evaluates minor league baseball logos. But when I asked her in an episode a while back about the Yard Goats, she said, well, you have to like it because it's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And I wonder, did that ever come up in these conversations? The use of the term?
No, that didn't. That was that became like a marketing angle, which Tim and his team developed afterwards. And they have a great ballpark. If you've never been to the ballpark, it's gorgeous. Yeah, it's modern. It's beautiful. The integration of the colors. But yeah, that was. I remember the external facade, the wrapping, the graphic wrap. It was great. It had like fans of all walks of life up there on it, and it said, there was sort of the GOAT, greatest of all time references, and they really ran with that. They've done an incredible job.
I'm really happy to see that they won all these awards with their stadium and that it's such a great fan experience there, because there's nothing worse than a team that has like great branding and then you get there and it's like a subpar experience at the ballpark.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think I would go as far as to say like their experience exceeds their branding. So if you like the Yard Goats branding, like the experience is incredible. They just get it. They're like top notch. Everything is impeccable. Everything's power washed every day. The customer service is like you would get at a luxury hotel. They just get it.
It's awesome. Well, it's top of my list. I've got a bucket list of minor league baseball stadiums that I want to get to, and that's definitely one of them. So it's, part of that's the brand, and part of it's what I keep hearing about the ballpark itself. Jason, thank you once again for joining us.
I love this. This is
love
so fun.
having you come on and talk about the work that you guys do. And, obviously it's so important for minor league baseball. People can find you on all the socials at Brandiose and brandiose.com. It's pretty easy.
You got
to
it.
find
Come
Brandiose.
visit us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, just you wait. In December, we're coming to visit.
I'm putting it down on my calendar right now.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jason, before that, we will see you again on the podcast because I know I've got some more Brandiose logos coming up. So we'll talk to you next time. Hi, friends. Paul here. You're about to hear a really fun conversation that I had with Suzie Hunter a few weeks ago. You'll note that we were talking about sort of her career arc, and she's in Denver now and looking for the next big adventure. In the time since we recorded this interview, Suzie announced that she has taken a position covering the Colorado Rockies with Denver Sports. That's DNVR Sports. And so congratulations to Suzie on that. You'll hear us talk with a little bit of uncertainty about what she has coming up next, but that's what she has coming up next. Enjoy the interview. All right, everyone, welcome back. I can't tell you how thrilled I am right now to be joined by Suzie Hunter, who I have been following on Twitter forever. I'm a huge fan of your work, Suzie. Suzie covered the Hartford Yard Goats as a features reporter for the Hartford Current, and then went on to be a TV reporter with WTNH in New Haven, Connecticut. And Suzie, you're sort of aside from the goat on the logo, you're sort of the face I associate with this team, like first thing, just because as I was introduced to the team when it came into existence, you were the reporter, you were the Twitter personality who I saw reporting on it the most. So first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. Yeah, I don't think anyone in Hartford was more excited for the Yard Goats to happen than me. I was absolutely pumped.
Well, so when I reached out to you to talk to you for this episode, you said, and I hope I can share this, I hope this wasn't in confidence, but you said, that weird little team changed my life.
It's true though. Like, it's so funny. I think back to when they announced that they were moving this team to Hartford, when they announced the name, and like it just got so much attention. And I remember just like looking through all the tweets about the Yard Goats, and then like stumbling upon all the people, like all the Rockies fans who tweet about the Rockies, all the Rockies Twitter personalities, and like started following them. And like those people ended up becoming my friends. Now I live in Denver. So like it actually changed like the path of my life.
That is, literally it changed your life. So that's sort of wild. It's the power of minor league baseball, I guess. In Hartford, when the New Britain Rockcats moved to Hartford and, they introduced the team, we've talked already on this podcast about how they had that sort of shaky start where the stadium wasn't quite ready and they had the very long season on the road. What was the reaction to the team and this very different brand when they announced that they were coming to town?
Yeah, it was definitely very divisive when this all first went down. A lot of people were annoyed that they were moving a team, just 5 miles away. But, they got a lot of hate for that. They got a lot of hate for, oh, you're going to move it to Hartford. Hartford's such a dump. People love to, kind of say bad things about Hartford. So that in itself was really divisive to people. And also Hartford's kind of broke. So like building a new stadium was also kind of controversial for a bunch of reasons. But a lot of people like me chose to be excited about it and saw all the potential. But once all the stadium stuff happened, all of the delays, the whole road goat season where those guys never played a home game basically for a whole season, that did not do them any favors. So heading into the first season that they actually played, there were a lot of people in Hartford who were like, oh, I'm not going to a Yard Goats game. I'm boycotting that. I won't be a part of it.
And so, obviously what a turnaround, right? Because the stadium has won all these awards. It's a beautiful stadium. I say that as someone who has not actually been to a Hartford Yard Goats game, but I see all the awards that it wins. The social media presence that the team had was obviously big. You covered them, like I said, as a features reporter at first, and then as a as a sports reporter, the turnaround that they had, what was it, do you think, that caused the community ultimately to embrace the Yard Goats? I assume that that's what happened because the nation embraced the Yard Goats, right? Like the Twitter is huge. There's sales on their caps. I'm sitting here wearing a Hartford Yard Goats cap, and I've never been to a game. I just love the logo and had to have it. So what do you think caused the sort of turnaround to have the community ultimately embrace the team?
Yeah, well, the social media presence leading up to their first actual home games saved them completely. They were so funny on Twitter. Mike Abramson did such a good job, and then Dana Feigenbaum took it over. She did such a great job. Just like, we're so good at reading the tone of the community and also balancing that with like being unhinged and hilarious on Twitter, which like works so well for brands. I think having great merch helped them. My friends and I would joke during that season where they did not play in Hartford, we would joke, oh, like the Yard Goats aren't a baseball team, they're a clothing brand. Because they had great merch. We loved their merch. We were still buying it even though we could not go to games. But I think what turned it around ultimately is when they played that first game at Dunkin' Donuts Park on April 13th, 2017, people got to the stadium and realized, oh, this is really cool. This is a really great place. Plus, like, the Yard Goats logo is perfect. It's delightful. It has the Whalers colors, so it kind of, pays homage to Hartford's sports past, but like acknowledging, hey, we're on a new chapter of our Hartford sports identity here.
Absolutely. I'm interested from your perspective as, someone who is in the sports media. You're a fan of a pretty intense sports city. You are living in Denver now, which is certainly a major league sports city. It's got all the major professional sports, 5 if you count soccer. Mm-hmm. Covering a minor league baseball team in a part of the country that's pretty intense about its sports. What does minor league baseball mean to a community like Hartford?
Oh my gosh. I just had the most delightful time covering the Yard Goats. They're so much fun. And there's things you can do with minor league baseball that you cannot do with Major League Baseball. But the thing about Connecticut specifically is that the sports identity there it's an absolute mess. It's like half New York fans, half Boston fans. I know people from Connecticut who are like, oh, I'm a Patriots fan, but I'm also a Yankees fan. I'm like, this is not right.
It's not acceptable.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
But they think it's right. It's fine. But there are not a lot of things that Connecticut fans can all kind of like get on the same page with. UConn women's basketball is of course the big one, but it's just kind of an opportunity for this divisive area to kind of come together and be like, it's just baseball, let's have fun. For sure.
Are there players who you covered when you were there? You said you left in 2021, mm-hmm. and now you're in Denver. Are there players who you covered when they were with the Yard Goats who are with the Rockies now?
Oh my God. Yeah, of course. It's so funny. If you look at like the Road Goat season, there are so many like great guys on that team that like no one ever got to see. But yeah, there's definitely like a bunch that of course are Rockies now. I stay in touch with Brendan Rodgers' family because I would see them all the time at games. I was actually over the summer when I was in Denver, I was at a game. My friends and I were like walking through a sports bar on our way to the game. We saw all these people wearing Brendan Rodgers jerseys. I was like, oh, heck yeah. Like, yes, we're repping Brendan Rodgers. And then I realized, like, oh, it's his family. I should have known that it was weird that a whole table of people were wearing Brendan Rodgers jerseys. But like, that was like a really exciting addition to the Yard Goats team. And then like seeing him make it all the way up was super fun.
That's cool. Do you have a sense for how the players liked the brand itself? I mean, if you're a professional baseball player, did you like being a Hartford Yard Goat?
I mean, for the most part, it seems like they did. I have never heard otherwise, or at least like no one said anything to my face. But yeah, I've heard nothing, but I've never heard anything bad about the brand.
Obviously the term Yard Goat is a train term. It's a railroad term. Do you think, did that need a lot of explaining in the local community, or do people get that right away because the railroad was a big deal there?
I don't think anyone would have immediately put that together. So like, because when they announced it, they, added that explanation right away. people are like, oh yeah, like I get it. And then like, oh, now I understand the font because the font is reminiscent of the train line. So it definitely needed that explanation. And like, even now, I will say all over the country, I see people wearing Yard Goats gear. But people are like, oh, wait, it's a goat, right? I'm like, no, it's not just a goat in a yard. It's actually a train. But don't worry, the mascots that walk around are still goats. And they're
still goats. So, obviously minor league baseball is the heart and soul of America in so many ways, right? And you got to see that firsthand as a sports media person. But then you went on from being at WTNH covering the Yard Goats to do this thing that made, I think, so many of us, myself included, wildly jealous, which was that you went and saw 31 stadiums, 31 Major League Baseball stadiums over the course of an entire summer. And this thing that you did where you got a souvenir ball and wrote the date and the location on the ball, like that just, as a person who collects things, for me, it's ice cream helmets, but like that just, I was just like, holy smokes, I got to quit my job and do this thing that Suzie Hunter just did. What inspired you to go see, and I say 31 because one of them was at Buffalo, right? That was the 31st. Okay.
Yeah, I started the road trip in May. Okay. So by the time I was, kind of on the road, they were already leaving Dunedin. The Blue Jays were leaving Dunedin. So I went to Buffalo because that is where, at that point in time, they were playing the rest of the season. And then Canada opened back up. And then I was like, okay, now I need to figure out how I'm going to get to Canada at the end of the season. And I made it happen. So I count that as 31 Major League ballparks.
I think it's totally fair. And it's so cool that you got to see the game in Buffalo as a Major League stadium. So that was this weird sort of amalgam of your minor league baseball affinity and then your Major League Baseball road trip here.
The funny thing is when I saw, so when I went to Buffalo for a Major League Baseball game in a minor league park, I like low-key love the Blue Jays because their AA team plays the Yard Goats a lot. So it's like I saw Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. a lot in Hartford. So then like seeing them again playing in a minor league stadium, I was like, this doesn't feel that different.
And so then I understand you're writing a book about that experience right now?
I am. Yeah, it's so funny. So I've been saying like, oh yeah, it's like an Eat, Pray, Love, but all the ballparks. And then I realized like, oh, I've actually never even read Eat, Pray, Love. So I found a copy of it and I'm reading it now. But I was like, no, I think it's like pretty much of a similar vibe. Yeah. But working on a book, I mean, you can't do a journey like this and not document it and not share it. Because of course, like, baseball is never just baseball. Like you go through so much, you learn so much about yourself, especially when you just spend a summer traveling. It's so different. It like so gets you out of your mindset that you were in before you left. It was just an absolutely incredible experience.
Do you have I hate this question. I'm not going to ask you what was your favorite ballpark. As soon as I started to ask that question, I was just like, that's a terrible
Thank you
question.
Actually so much for not asking that.
It was not even halfway out of my mouth. And I was like, what a stupid question. Okay. No, but here's my question. As a person who enjoys minor league baseball, I have done small minor league baseball trips. I do something called Baseball Palooza every summer with college buddies. We go and we see, 4 minor league parks in 4 days. Have you considered the idea of a minor league version of the major league trip that you took?
Well, it's physically not possible to do every minor league team in one season.
Right.
Honestly, just doing 30 ballparks in one season was hard enough. So it's like, oh, maybe I could do each level and split it up over a few years.
Right.
But I definitely am planning some mini minor league road trips. I started planning them when I wasn't sure what was going to happen with this season.
Yeah.
But now, I'm figuring it out. But I would love to go to every minor league ballpark. I've been to a bunch and I'd love to go to more because minor league baseball is just the most delightful thing to me.
Well, it'd probably be a lot cheaper to do that than it would have been to do the major league version.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah, it's an expensive trip, for sure. But also no matter where you're staying, things are expensive. Hotels are expensive now. Gas is astronomical.
Yes. Yeah,
so
for sure.
It probably wouldn't be that much cheaper, honestly.
Awesome. You and I are fellow Philadelphia sports fans. One of our very first interactions was I was one of the people you sent a postcard to from the Super Bowl.
Oh my God. Wait, that was so fun. Okay, so like we kind of like put that out there. I'm like, you know what? Whoever wants a postcard, I will send you a postcard. And like 70 people wanted postcards.
Did they really?
And so like we went to the store and printed out all of these postcards. And like, first of all, not cheap to do.
No, I'm sure.
And then like we like hand wrote a note on every single one of them. And I was like, it took us like hours to do. I'm like, geez, like we're already like really tired. I cannot believe we're doing this right.
But I have to say that postcard is, I've moved twice since then, right? But that postcard is with all of my Eagles Super Bowl stuff. So that's
I could cry.
This episode will drop on April 19. And that is, thankfully, now that Major League Baseball has salvaged its season, and they did so before the Phillies visiting the Rockies took place. And as this drops, that's happening right now. And so I'm looking at future Paul here. I'm actually going to tomorrow afternoon's game. I'm going to see the Phillies and the Rockies in Colorado. When the Rockies play the Phillies, who do you root for?
I go neutral.
Okay.
I love them both so much now. So actually, when I go to a Phillies Rockies game, whether I'm in Philly, whether I'm in Denver, I will wear Yard Goats gear.
That's the perfect. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wear Yard Goats gear to the Phillies Rockies game then on Wednesday, April 20th. So Suzie, thank you so much for joining me. It's a thrill to finally get to speak to you in person after having followed you for so long on Twitter, and to follow your adventures with the Yard Goats and on your road trip, and then whatever is coming next. Obviously it's going to be great. And yeah, go Phils, go Birds, go Rockies. What about the other Denver sports teams? Or is it go Broncos yet? Go Nuggets, that sort of thing?
I've definitely adopted the other Denver teams as like my second team. So like, listen, I'll root for the Broncos. It only becomes an issue with the Eagles like once every 4 years.
Right.
So like, I don't see that as a problem. But I mean, there's kind of a lot to be excited about with the Broncos coming up. The Nuggets are really exciting. The Avs are really exciting. So it's like, I'd be an idiot if I wasn't excited about Denver sports. So I've definitely adopted them, and they have a very special place in my heart.
Well, welcome to the Mountain Time Zone. We're thrilled to have you here. It's been a huge pleasure talking to you. And obviously when the book comes out, I'll be first in line.
You better have me back on the podcast, okay?
100%. We'll do a whole Suzie Hunter episode instead of just the one segment. We'll do a whole Suzie Hunter episode.
I'm gonna need all the promo I can get. I appreciate you so much.
All right. Thank you, Suzie. I appreciate it. You can find Suzie Hunter online at thesuziehunter.com and on all the socials at thesuziehunter.